Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha, Kodash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the elect. And today we're going to go into the book of Lamentations, the 5th chapter, the last chapter in the book of Lamentations. And pretty much as we've gone through the first 4 chapters, you've seen how it's really a mourning, right? Or a lamenting for the anguish and tribulation that our people went through at this time. Right during the time of the siege of Jerusalem, around 586 BC, by the Babylonians. So, you read about things that happened as a result of the siege itself, right? Having been cut off from supplies, and eventually famine and starvation, and eventually cannibalism as well setting in within the walls, and then having the troops without the walls, and then also them breaking in and basically destroying the things, the people, and so on and so forth. So this is Lamentations chapter 5 verse 1. Remember, O Lord Yahweh, what has come upon us. Consider and behold our reproach. So as you can see, the subheading is a prayer for mercy, right? Where here, it's pretty much we're beseeching the Lord, okay, to have mercy, right? To look at the things that are coming upon us, and to remember that Israel is still his chosen. Okay, so as it says here, consider and behold our reproach. Our inheritance is turned to strangers, our houses to aliens, right? And so that inheritance here is really going into the land, right? The possessions. And this happened because when we were taken over, majority of the people were taken out the land as slaves, as captives. And so naturally the heathens, right, the neighboring nations, because remember at this point, the southern kingdom is pretty much surrounded by heathens, right? Those that were in the region or the territory of the northern kingdom were pretty much heathens that were put there by the Assyrians. Then you had, the Moabites, the Ammonites, the Edomites, the Canaanites, right? All neighboring nations anyway. So as they beheld this, remembering that they had been subject unto us during the reign of King David and King Solomon, right? And even partially with King Saul, they took advantage, right? And they came in there, they took our cities, right? They took parts of our land. As a matter of fact, let's go real quick to the book of First Ezra chapter 4. And I just want to go straight to the point. I believe it should be around the 40th or so verse right here. Let's see. Maybe I'm skimming through too fast, but I believe it was either during the request by Zerubbabel to Darius that he mentioned us being able to go back and here it is, the 50th verse. So this is actually the decree that Darius made concerning the given permission for us to go back, meaning the Jews here in Babylon to go back to Jerusalem and go and continue building the temple. Now what he mentions here as part of the decree in the 50th verse is, and that all the country which they hold should be free without tribute. So all the regions which the Israelites, had jurisdiction or dwelt wouldn't have to pay tribute or taxes. And that the Edomites should give over the villages of the Jews, which then they held. So at the time when we fell, not only did the Edomites burn the temple, or contribute in that, not only did they help come against and capture some Israelites when the Babylonians were doing their thing, afterwards they also came and took over part of our villages and cities. And here you can see now permission was given for us to gain all those back. So going back to Lamentations, the 5th chapter, as it reads in the 2nd verse, our inheritance is turned to strangers, right? They now have taken everything that we own, our houses to aliens, repeating the same thing, right? Verse 3, we are orphans and fatherless. Our mothers are as widows. And this is the general description, right, of the state, of the people, having lost parents, right? Children having lost parents, parents having lost children, family members, husbands, wives, all of that. Some dead, some taken captive, some separated, because in the time, in warlike times or in a time of captivity, your captors don't really care. Whether it's your aunt, your brother, your cousin, they don't really care. It says our mothers are as widows, right? And a widow we know is one that has lost, right, the husband. Verse 4, we have drunken our water for money. Our wood is sold on to us. So drinking your water for money, meaning that they had to pay for it, right? Our wood is sold on to us. Once again, pay for it. Now, this is a indication also of servitude, because if you are in your own land, you don't pay for water, right? You just go and with whether it's a well or whatever the case is, and you draw water. If you are in a land that is now taken over by someone, like us here in America, for example, you have to pay for these things, all right? Wood, all of these things. Verse 5, our necks are under persecution. We labor and have no rest. See? So, because remember, the siege wasn't just like the Babylonians came up in there. And when I say Babylonians, I'm saying it generally, right? Because it wasn't just, just them, right? They were the ones, the main nation that did it. But you also had others that here and there partook. The point is, they didn't just come and just say, okay, we're going to come and destroy Jerusalem and then we're just going to call it a day. No, that was the beginning of, we were already paying tribute to them. We were already subject onto them, but that was the beginning of more so taking us out of the land and then, making us even more, I don't know if indentured would be the right word, but in Babylon. So as it says here, we have no rest, right? We're not at peace. We have given the hand to the Egyptians and to the Assyrians to be satisfied with bread, meaning that they submitted, right, to the Egyptians, to the Assyrians, just so they could make it by. Verse 7, our fathers have sinned and are not, so they're dead. And we have borne their iniquities, and now we're paying for the sins that were committed, which we know in actuality that that iniquity that they bore was really due to them, right? Because in the scriptures, reincarnation is a point that's made in here, right? It's a concept in the Bible anyway, and therefore it's a concept in reality. But the point being, their fathers that sinned and those that bore the iniquity, meaning they carried it or they had to deal with it or it fell upon them, it was really they themselves, right, coming back to pay for that. And the reason is because we know precepts that tell us that the son will not pay for the sins of the father, right? So going on, verse 8, servants have ruled over us, and this is referring on to these the other nations here. And when you read in the book of Deuteronomy, right, the reason it says servants is because in the book of Deuteronomy, it's made known that the children of Israel were chosen above all other nations. Really, the other nations were created to serve the Israelites, and now it was flipped upside down. So servants have ruled over us. There is none that doth deliver us out of their hand, right? Because our deliverer was the one bringing them against us, and there was nothing we could do about that. We get our bread with the peril of our lives because of the sword of the wilderness. So the dangers, right, as to where when you had a functioning civilization, everything was all good. You had a marketplace and X, Y, and Z, right? But now, not only did you have like a lack of food, famines, but even just to find food or get it, you had to go through all these dangers. Verse 10, our skin was black like an oven because of the terrible famine. The black meaning that their skin was getting darker. Now what I did was I looked it up because throughout this book, there's a lot of mention about the visage being black, the skin being darker due to the famine. So I looked up here, does famine darken your skin? And it says here, yes, famine can cause dark pigmentation to appear on the face and trunk of the body. This is likely due to a glandular disturbance. Other skin signs of starvation include dry, inelastic skin, and so on and so forth. It says here, melanin is the pigment that gives skin its color, and it's produced by melanocytes, which are cells located in the skin. In certain conditions, melanocytes can become abnormal, causing the skin to darken excessively. One more here. This is the effects of lack of food. Due to the wasting away of the tissues around the orbits, many people's eyes will start to stick out. The skin becomes dry and inelastic. Dark pigmentation can start to appear on the face and trunk. It is probably caused by a glandular disturbance, which was also mentioned up here. So it's not just metaphorical when it was mentioning the skin being black, the visage being dark because of the lack of food. Verse 11, but it is metaphorical about being like an oven, right? It's just a comparison there. Verse 11, they ravished the women of Zion, ravish meaning to rape, right? Take them against their will. They ravished the women of Zion and the maids in the cities of Judah. And conventionally, right, this is what typically happens. Some nations, they have troops, right, and soldiers, and some of them have mercenaries, right? But regardless, when troops and these soldiers, they go to war, they're not going to be there, especially when they find, for example, women. Like even today, right? They were mentioning that I think it was what they were at least showing on TV. The perception they were given was that when the Russians invaded Ukraine, they were going there and ravishing the women and so on and so forth. So this is something that, especially in war, it happens, right? So continuing, it says here, they ravished the women in Zion and the maids in the cities of Judah. And that's going to happen again in this time, but it's not going to be isolated to just Israelites. Okay, because ravishing and taking women against their will and all these things, that's like a byproduct of lawlessness, anarchy. Even when society still stands, these things happen. Okay. Verse 12, princes are hanged up by their hand, the faces of elders were not honored. Right. So, and the princes being like those that were considered in a high state, right? But as it says, they were hanged up by their hand, whether public execution, whatever the case is. The faces of the elders were not honored, right? So they weren't regarded as they normally would be as elders, basically being mistreated. Verse 13, they took the young men to grind, meaning to work, and typically grinding meaning to grind the mill, right? Millstones, which is used to make certain products, for example, like wheat, right? Or flour, I should say, where this is what a millstone looks like. Millstone. Grinding. So this is an example of a millstone where you have it's actually two stones. And this has this little handle and then a space in here. So you pour the grain through here and then you grind by turning the handle, and it's literally grinding the grains between the two stones, and then the flour that is being ground, if that's the word, out, is now being captured inside of this box, which can then be poured out and used for whatever they're trying to use it for. So that's an example of what a millstone looks like. And you can see the flour coming out from the sides as she grinds. So as it says, and the children fell under the wood, meaning like under whatever labor they were put under. Maybe it's carrying, right, going and getting wood, carrying it. But they were basically putting them to work. Okay. Verse 14, the elders have ceased from the gate. And, typically, right, the gate would be, literally like the entrance, like the main area. And you would have like the elders there, some of the princes, judges, so on. As a matter of fact, I think if we look up under dictionaries, if we can find maybe gate, should give us some history here. It says here, at the gates of the city's courts of justice were frequently held. At the gates of cities, courts of justice were frequently held, and hence judges of the gate are spoken of in these precepts that they list. At the gates, prophets also frequently delivered their messages, right? Cry aloud, spare not. Criminals were punished without the gates. By the gates of righteousness, we are probably to understand those of the temple, the gates of hell, and it gives other examples here. But as you can see, this is sort of like the entrance, like the main area, right? So going back, but it's not every precept that you would see that, because some precepts use the gate metaphorically, right, for something else, and it's not always going to be literal. But once again, it depends on the context. Anyway, as it says, the elders have ceased from the gate, the young men from their music. So what's happening here is a description of how life used to be versus how it's no longer like that, right? What you would normally see is the elders at the gate. You normally see like, men, like, I think some years ago, I don't know if they still do it, but sometimes you would go downtown or a certain area and you would have maybe like a little crowd gathered. Somebody would be playing the piano, and I'm talking about in today's day, or playing the guitar or singing, and then people will be around watching, cheering or dropping $1 in their hat. So you can imagine like the ancient world version of that. But that was no more. The joy of our heart has ceased. Our dance is turned into mourning. So all of that is gone. And that's where the things, at some point, you were joyous, you were living life, everything was normal. All of that is gone. Verse 16, the crown is fallen from our head. Woe unto us that we have sinned. So the crown has fallen. It's just, an analogy here, right? The crown fallen is likened onto you being brought down, right, to a low state. As if, a crown was actually taken off of a king's head, because that crown is a symbol, right, that symbolizes, that authority, that exaltation. Verse similar to how when you are crowned, it's almost symbolic of you gaining this power or authority. So the decrowning is like being dethroned, where you're losing that, the reverse. Verse 17, for our heart is faint, for these things our eyes are dim. Okay, i.e., everybody's pretty much in depression, right? Going through, the witnessing this, those that survived, those that are taken captive, everybody's pretty much in a very low spirits, right? As it says, our eyes are dim. Now you can imagine when somebody, if you've ever seen somebody that lost somebody that was very close to them, like a loved one or something, and you can tell when you look at them that they've been crying all the time, and they're just in this very like somber, depressed mood. You can see that their eyes are not really wide open. Their eyes are like dim. They're very dull, because they've been, they're just so depressed, almost lifeless. So imagine a situation like that, right? Verse 18, because of the mountain of Zion, which is Jerusalem, right? Because Jerusalem is a hill country, literally, which is desolate. The foxes walk upon it, right? And how did it come to this? Once again, for like the millionth time, it was destroyed, right? And this was a judgment that came from the Heavenly Father for or because of our disobedience. Verse 19, thou, O Lord Yahweh, remainest forever, thy throne from generation to generation. Wherefore dost thou forget us forever, and forsake us so long time? So in other words, you Lord, you're always there. You're always going to be there. You've always been there. But why do you continue to forsake us? Why are you not doing anything? Why do you continue to watch us go through this, right, for such a long time? Verse 21, turn thou us unto thee, O Lord, and we shall be turned. Renew our days as of old. So turning us onto thee and we shall be turned. In other words, return us back to that original state. Tell us what you want us to do. Give us that chance back and we'll do it. Restore us back to how we were before. And this is like a begging, right? Asking for the Lord's mercy for him to get us out of this situation. And I keep saying us, but I'm referring to the Israelites here at this time. Verse 22, but thou hast utterly rejected us. Thou art very wroth against us. Right. And when you read this, let me actually just show it in some of these other translations. Most of them use the word here instead of but, more so like unless. So as if you read verse 21 and 22, together using unless, then it sounds as though it's saying, well, Lord, have mercy on us. Return us back to who we were before, unless you've just at this point had enough. You've just completely rejected us, right? As it says, thou art very wroth against us. Okay. And so that brings us to the end of Lamentations, the 5th chapter, and also the end of the book of Lamentations. And so, as I mentioned in the beginning, around what time this was, what is going on, what is taking place, and Lord willing, this was edifying to the elect. In closing, I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Racha Kodash. Until next time, Shalom.